Okay then, so we've seen now this one-way data communication from a parent component to a child component using props. So we've passed down this friends data to each component, then we've listed that data in each one as well. So imagine now we want to communicate something back up to the parent from a child to a parent. How do we do that? For example, imagine when you click on one of these friends in either component, we want to unfriend them. That is, we want to therefore delete that friend from our data. Now, our friend data is being stored inside the parent component. So we need to find a way to communicate from the child to the parent so that we can then delete that friend from the data. So the way we can do that is by emitting events from children. So, for example, we could attach a click event to each one of these li tags over here and these ones here. And when we click on one of those, fire a function inside each one of these components, depending on which one we click on. Inside that function, what we'll do is say, okay, I want you to fire an event from this component. So the parent component, when an event fires from either of these, will be able to listen to that event firing and it can react. So the reaction will be to take that friend that a user's clicked on and delete it from the data. So then when the data is updated, it gets updated in these two components as well. Alright then, so what I'd like to do is emit a custom event from this component right here when a user clicks on one of these names to unfriend them. So that custom event will be emitted and heard by this parent component, which can react by then deleting that friend from the data that it stores. Then when it's deleted from this data, it's going to be updated in these two components because we receive it as a prop. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is detect when a user has clicked on one of these names. And to do that, we can attach a click event to each of the span tags here. So let's do that first of all. So I'm in allFriends.view and this span tag is where we output the name. This is the thing we want to attach a click event to. So to attach an event, we say @, that's short for v on, and then the type of event, which is a click event, and we'll set this equal to a function that we'll call unfriend. Now we've not made that function, so let's do it. Inside the methods property, we'll have this function called unfriend. Okay then, so what we really want to do is pass a parameter through into this function, and that parameter is going to be the name of the friend that we want to delete. So we can just say friend.name, because remember, each time we're outputting this span, we have access to the individual friend that we're currently cycling through. So we're attaching this click event and this function to each span that's output, and each time we're passing through a different parameter which reflects that particular friend's name. So then we can take this as a parameter here, we'll just call it name, and we can then do something to emit an event to the parent component and pass the parent component the name of the user that we want to delete, the name of the friend that we want to delete. So first of all, how do we emit an event from this child component to the parent component? First of all, we say this references this particular component. Then we say dot and $emit. So this is a method that we can use to emit a custom event from this component. Now then, this method takes two parameters. The first parameter right here is going to be the name of this event. Now we can call this event whatever we want. It's a custom event. I'm going to call it delete. Okay, the second parameter, which is optional, is any data you want to send with this custom event. So this right here is an object, this second parameter, and you can pass different parameters through inside this object. We just need to pass one parameter through, and that is the friend's name, which we receive right here. So we could call this parameter name and set it equal to name. But again, a bit of ES6 allows us to take off this thing right here because both of those are the same thing, name and name. If they were called something different, we couldn't do that. So now we're passing this name through with this custom event, so that when we click on this span, we're emitting a custom event called delete, and we're passing the name through as data with that custom event. So when this component is emitting an event, this thing right here, this parent component, it can listen out for that event on this thing. Much like we can listen out for a click event or a mouse move event, we can listen out for that custom component event as well. So much like listening for any other event, we can use @on or the @ symbol. So I'll use @ and then the name of the event, which we called delete. Remember, we named it right here. So when it emits that event, this thing is going to detect it. So we can set that equal to a function which will fire when it does detect that delete event. So that function is then going to delete the friend from this data. Let's call that function delete friend. Delete friend. And then we need to define that function down here. So first of all, we'll do our methods property. And we forgot the M right there. And inside here, we need that delete friend method. Now then, this delete friend method is going to take that data that was passed to us from here. Remember, we sent this name property inside this object. So we can receive that event data inside this function right here. The way we do that is just by passing in a parameter. Now, typically, we call this parameter payload. You don't have to call it that, but I'm going to call it payload in this case. So, first of all, inside here, what I'll do is console.log the payload, just so we can see that and what it is exactly. So let's save it, and let's try this out in a browser. I'll inspect the elements so we can get the console over here. We'll go to console and clear this, zoom in a little. All right, so let's click on one of these things. Mario, we see we get this logged to the console. This is all working. Luigi, Toad, Bowser. So when we're clicking on these names, we're emitting a custom event and sending along that data to the root component. The root component is listening for this custom event, reacting by firing this function, delete friend, and it's logging this to the console. Now, just to show you that we don't have to call it payload, I'll just call it pay, so you can see this as well. And if we delete all this and click on one now, you can see it still works. Typically, you find people calling this payload, so I'll do the same thing. All right, so now we have that data inside this function. We have the name of the person we want to delete from this friends array. So let's do that. So we can say this.friends is equal to something because we're going to update it. We're grabbing the friends property right here, this.friends, and we're going to update it to equal something else. And we'll set it to this.friends.filter. Now, .filter is a method that's going to filter through this array right here. We can use it on arrays to take something out of it if you like. Now, I go into depth about the filter array in the last chapter, the bonus section, where I talk about a few ES6 features and different functions. So if you're unsure as to what this exactly does and want to learn a bit more about it, feel free to check out that video. But anyway, this takes in each friend, and this is an ES6 function. Again, ES6 functions I cover in the last section, so feel free to check that out. So inside this function, what we want to do is return either true or false for each friend. If we return true, then we'll keep that friend inside the array. If we return false, we'll filter that friend out of the array. Now, what we want to check is if the name of each friend that we're cycling through here is equal to the name that we receive here. If it is equal, then we want to return false. Therefore, that friend is filtered out of the array. So let's return here, first of all, friend.name. So the friend that we're currently cycling through, the name property of that, and we want to make sure that it's not equal to the thing that we send here, because if it's not equal, we're returning true, right? And we want that friend to stay in. So not double equals payload.name. So if these two are not the same, then it's going to stay inside that array. If they are the same, it's going to filter it out because this will then be false. Okay? So let's save that and check this out in a browser. Get rid of the console. If I click on one now, Mario, for example, it deletes Mario, right? We're emitting that custom event, sending Mario, doing the filter. It detects that Mario is the name, so it removes Mario from the array, passes down those updated props, and therefore that data is updated in each one of these components where we receive those props. Awesome.